You release helium, hot air rises, of course, you go up. But after that, there's literally no steering, there's no brakes, there's nothing. You're at the mercy of winds and weather, and it's a totally organic experience. And I guess that's a good way to sum up kind of how travel is.
Welcome to Locales Unknown. This podcast gives you the tools you need to choose your next travel destination and the tips you want to be able to explore like a local. Here are your hosts, Chris and Winfield.
Welcome, everybody, to Locales Unknown. I am your host, Chris, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Winfield. And today we had the pleasure of interviewing Winfield. So this is the first couple of episodes here of our podcast, and we wanted to make sure that you guys got to know your hosts as much as possible. So we took a couple of minutes to interview each other, ask about previous travel experiences, our motivations, inspirations, and dreams overall. We even went as far to do the rapid fire questions lightning round at the end. So what's up, Winfield?
Not too much, man. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for the interview today. I really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun. Looking forward to diving into this new adventure with you. It's something that there's always something around the next turn. You don't know what's coming, right? So that's the beauty of podcasting in the digital age.
Absolutely. And honestly, watching your travels, following along, and over the 15 years that we've known each other, just hearing all of your experiences has been inspirational and really pushed me out of my comfort zone and limits for sure. So I am really excited to introduce this episode with you and hearing all about your experiences and motivation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and give them what they want. We'll jump right into the interview. Stick with us for after the interview. We'll come back to you, wrap things up, and share a little bit more with you. Without further ado, here is myself interviewing Winfield Glascock. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Locales Unknown. I am Chris, and today I am able to pick the brain of one of the most well-traveled people I have ever met, and his name is Winfield Glascock. What's up, Winfield?
What's going on, man? How you been?
Pretty good. So I know we did an interview on the flip side of you interviewing me, and you did mention it's been 15 years since we first met. Can you believe that?
I can't. Time flies when you're having fun, especially since college, right?
I mean, what did we survive, man? We survived the pandemic, all of our travels, various different locations. You're a married man now. I mean, just life just keeps on trucking on, right?
Indeed. Adaptation. Awesome. Keyword.
That is exactly right. So, and I remember all the way back in college, travel was always a big part of your life. And I had a great time always trying to catch up and figure out where in the world Winfield Glascock is. And I know, what is the country count up to now?
So right now I'm standing at 73. So
wow, 73.
Hope to be just shy of 80 by the end of the year. So yeah, we're getting there. Not quite at half of the UN recognized countries, but we're working on it.
Well, I mean, how old are you? You're only, 33?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, plenty of time. And I know that travelers don't really subscribe to that way of thinking, plenty of time. We're all about YOLO. But yeah, plenty of time, man. So that's awesome. So I want to spend the next couple of minutes with you just talking about some of your travel experiences. So fill us in. When did you start traveling? Where have you been to? Tell us all.
Sure thing. So I started off traveling, just kind of road trips as a child. We did our classic kind of summer vacations. Used to go to the same place every year, Ogunquit, Maine, 16-hour drive. Would stop in the same hotels a couple days.
Tradition.
Exactly, tradition. I had never been on a plane until 2006 when I was 18.
That's crazy.
So I talk about a short window of ramping up there. But first time I was ever on a plane was my graduation present from high school. And instead of going to the Outer Banks with the rest of the class, it was only a class of 53, my grandfather said, this is a time where you're going to go to Europe and you're going to experience a totally new side of life. And at the time, I was kind of torn because I thought, well, Europe, of course, I've always wanted to go there. I've been interested in maps and history, as you alluded to in the previous episode. Since a tender age of 6 or 7, I used to know all the capitals of every country in the world by age 7. So in that respect, I guess I've been precocious in certain respects. But I was torn at that point because, you want to be with your friends, you want to hang out, you want to experience that stage of life. There's another stage that's going to wait, and you can get to that when you're ready. But I'm so glad that I did, because my first flight was an overnight flight on Austrian Air, direct from Dulles to Vienna, and just landed in this beautiful city that has so much history, just dates back. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but there's just so much going on there. And we proceeded to tour around Switzerland, Germany, and this is actually during the World Cup. We were in Munich during the World Cup. Didn't go to any games, but definitely got the vibe of the World Cup, which was incredibly. It was just a fantastic experience. It was really blessed and really fortunate to be able to be in the environs at that time. And then from there, I kind of, as you know, when we met and when we kind of picked up travels in undergrad, I basically did half my undergrad degree in Europe. So I'd studied history and international comparative politics, and I did extensive study abroad. I studied abroad in England multiple times, in Cambridge and Oxford, studied French in Switzerland. So again, very, very privileged and very blessed to be able to experience those aspects of life from a different lens, because you're a student there. There's no question that that's your main thrust, but you're also interacting in daily life. So you're traveling. You're not just a tourist. You're really interacting with the people and the culture and the environment on a daily basis. So it's really immersion, and that's the key to learning a language for sure. That was one of the reasons that I was able to speak conversational French at one point. Not anymore, unfortunately. And then segueing into the next stage of my life, I completed I'm a lawyer by training, so I completed my Juris Doctorate overseas, University of Sydney in Australia, and I used that as a launching off point to work in Japan, Singapore, the Philippines, and really get Asia under my belt. At one point, I wanted to. Asia was my focus prior to the crash. Really over there, my father was in Japan for 27 years. My stepmother's Japanese, so I'd always had kind of this pivot towards Asia that the U.S. has been touting geopolitically. That it always kind of happened in my mind as a shift. And I spent quite a bit of time in Asia. I lived in those places, as I just mentioned, and was able to really draw upon it and see that this is a total epiphany that's happening in the world. There's a fundamental paradigm and power shift that's occurring, and Asia's at the heart of that. So it's really exciting to see. And ever since then, I've kind of dabbled around. I've been back in the States now 6 years. Been focusing much more on Latin America, South America. My wife's Brazilian, so been there several times. Every time I go down to South America, try to add another stopover. I've been to Africa now a couple of times, so just Antarctica that I'm waiting on to cap off 7. So
we were talking about that in the previous episode. It's how
exactly
how do we get down there? That's great, man. It's amazing to hear how just one simple decision like that, your grandfather pushing you to get out there and do a little bit more than the norm of what a high school graduate would do during that time, and how it just shifted the trajectory of your life, it sounds like. And you can really offer a unique perspective because, we were talking about this in the last episode. I don't really have any work experience overseas, maybe a couple cash jobs here and there, but that's just to, eat for the night. It sounds like the majority of your travels are really stemming in either schooling or some type of employment. So can you speak to us about the logistics about applying to these schools, applying to these jobs, how you're having to handle the culture shift?
Of course. No, that's so. Well, let's unpack that because that's a very large question. So to start with studies, I was fortunate at the time. George Mason, where Chris and I went to school together, had a very robust study abroad department.
Yeah.
What's that exactly? Rep it, right?
Yeah.
So they had a very robust study abroad department that knew me quite well and that was always willing to assist in any way possible. And they really went to bat for me on multiple occasions. What's tough with university admissions is whether you're a degree or non-degree seeking student. And if you're the former, you have to commit usually minimum of 2 to 4 years is typically the threshold. And the medium of instruction is not always English. So obviously, if you think about your Commonwealth countries, of course, that's probably not going to be an issue. And English is becoming more ubiquitous now, even in non-English speaking countries, i.e., where English is not an official language, because the international medium of communication essentially is English. Mandarin may be changing that in our lifetimes, but right now it's still English. So once you overcome that hurdle, it has a lot to do with where you see yourself. For instance, do you want to be doing an MBA at INSEAD in Lausanne, Switzerland, or do you want to be doing something at their satellite campus in Singapore? So what's your career goal? Where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself with this degree and that knowledge? And then finally, the cultural shift as well, because you're going to be probably interacting with people from all over the world. All the programs that I did, where it's a very international crowd. So you're really amongst the global elite, and you have to be in that milieu. You have to own it, and you have to be confident in yourself. There isn't any time for self-doubt and for any kind of introspection. You really have to come every day to crush it. And once you get over that, the biggest hurdle is just telling yourself that you can do it in any situation. Whether it's I was working in Parliament, whether it's giving a tour of British Parliament to Brits as an American, which I was nervous as could be. But you got to do it. You got to
That would be a strange experience right there.
Oh, indeed. Or whether or not it's presenting to my Japanese CEO over a private sushi dinner in the middle of this exclusive restaurant where we're knocking sake back like there's nothing. And I still got to do the presentation at the end. And I said, Sato-san, can I do the presentation before dinner? He's like, no, eat first. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is
Does the sake help with those nerves, though? Maybe a little bit.
A little bit, but at the same time, I knew that I couldn't completely get washed because I had to present, right?
That's
so. Yeah, those are some of the things, and then to your working question, each place is different, and each work culture is different, and you really have to feel it out. Is what I would say. So in some places, for instance, in Japan, I would come in the morning. This was kind of an office that was open plan, 500 desks, say. You would bow to walk in, and you would greet your colleagues as you're walking in. And then when you left for the day, you would say, Otsukare-sama desu, which means, thank you for the good work. And everybody would reply to that. And I thought to myself, I've never seen anything like this in my life. As a gaijin, they don't expect you to do it because you're not part of the group. But what a sense of collective spirit. It's empowering, and it's really encouraging because we come from a very individualistic society. And I think that term Confucian society is a little bit overused because it's a collectivist mindset. And when we say collectivist, we obviously don't mean Stalin-esque or anything like that. True. But we mean just more of a group think. And that's broadly true, I'd say. But there are nuances within that.
Sure. Absolutely. And just for anyone who doesn't know, the gaijin, you want to tell them what that is?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, foreigner.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I know probably 15 or 20 languages of foreigner or some variation thereof. So that's it just kind of gets peppered into the language sometimes.
It does sound like an incredible experience, though. And honestly, as I'm listening to this, it makes so much sense that you put yourself in these difficult situations, not only in different cultures, but such ambitious goals that having that mentality and mindset and comfort level with adversity probably translates into going to various aspects of the world, some off the beaten path where it might be a little bit more difficult to get around or even understand because English is not prevalent whatsoever. So I'm sure you've run into some experiences. I know at one point you told me you were in Russia and you didn't even know what you were ordering off the menu. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. So as we were discussing in the previous episode, started off with kind of the low hanging fruit. Did Europe and did some of the more familiar places. Didn't actually never been to the Caribbean prior to a few years ago, so that was a new experience. But after that, I thought to myself, okay, when I got my feet wet with studying in Australia, I thought, all right, I'm going to start seeing more of the developing world. And so that was Russia was actually right after I finished my work experience I just talked about in Japan. Flew directly from Tokyo to Vladivostok on this Russian airliner, which you think to yourself, oh man, when was this maintained last?
The duct tape on the wing and
Right, exactly. No disrespect to anybody that's Russian out there. It's
of course not.
it's a fantastic place. So I went to Siberia in the middle of winter. Don't recommend that unless you're a hardy traveler, alone. And my Russian was confined to the lexicon of a 1985 phrase book that my father insisted that I take with me. And I said, oh, no, they all speak English. Well, thank goodness he gave me that because I was in for a real surprise. I'll never forget. I got off the plane, get to the border guard crossing, and the woman looks at my passport. She sees I'm American, red flag, and then looks at me, looks at the visa, and then she says something, and I just do this. I shrug. I say, I don't know, and she just smiles and she's like, go ahead. I'm like, oh, great. This could go either really well or not so well. And I remember I got to the terminal and I'd arranged for my hotel to pick me up. And this guy had some kind of a sign in Cyrillic, which of course I can't read. And I was terrified because I didn't know where he was taking me. I had no idea if this was actually the guy from the hotel because he didn't speak any English, if he was actually there for me, if he was here for someone else. I was super confused. Turns out that he was actually there for me, but then the hotel tried to charge me afterwards, but there was someone else that was there for me. He wasn't the person. So it was a huge misunderstanding. Anyway, I eventually got to the hotel and started exploring Vladivostok, which is where the Eastern Fleet of the Russian Navy is headquartered, and pretty much everything is frozen solid. I mean, this is February, and it's minus 30 Celsius. At one point, it reached minus 40 when I got to Mongolia. So it's rough. So thermals all day. I mean, huge coat, and just walking around, it's miserable. And that trip really it opened my eyes in the sense that you can't just get everywhere in the world with English or expect people to speak your language. And you have to make an effort. You have to dabble in languages at the very least if you're going to get your point across. I mean, I remember getting into this station in Russia called Khabarovsk. It's a pretty big city, and I thought they had luggage storage. Nope, no luggage storage. So I had to trek around with two 20-kilo, 45-pound suitcases, dragging them through the snow for the next 6 hours. And that was miserable. And also quite a conversation piece coming into a restaurant where you're toting these suitcases and trying to sit down and you can't even order. I mean, the only thing I could say is vodka and, point at the menu exactly as you said. And I have no idea what I'm ordering. Things just arrive. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I mean, fortunately, I'm not really a picky eater. I wouldn't recommend that for everybody, but it's something that you just kind of go with it. So yeah, to wrap up, you're exactly right. Once you put your foot in the deep end of the pool, you keep wanting more. Typically, at least that's been my experience. You want to test the waters, you want to push the boundaries, and see what you're made of.
I'm sure the Caribbean sounds so good after lugging 2 suitcases through the snow. That is insane. But you're absolutely right. We were kind of alluding to this and really talking about it last episode, where it's about expanding your comfort zone. And once you have a taste for that, as you were saying, you kind of love to push that limit and see where really is that boundary. Does it even exist? Is it in our head? Because there's another person out there that probably went a little bit further. So what's the real difference? What's holding you back in a lot of ways? But That's awesome. So did you fit in those travels between semesters and maybe some vacation? I mean, obviously coming as an American perspective, I know the rest of the world does not do time off like we do. So how did you fit in all this stuff?
Yeah, so that particular experience that we were just discussing was actually my first law school summer.
Okay.
And so during law school, uh, the seasons are flipped in Australia, Southern Hemisphere. So December to February is summer vacation there, and winter vacation is July, confusingly enough. So yeah, so I was, as I said, I was working for this Japanese IT company, and I had just finished my stint there. And as part of well, it's really my birthday around that time too. So as part of that, I decided to work in Siberia, Mongolia, and Cambodia, which I hadn't been to since I lived there in 20. This was 2013, so I hadn't been there in almost 2 years, and really enjoyed that. So yes, everything that I did, with the exception of a few trips here and there that were kind of worked in on the way back home, were in between semesters or in between work experiences.
Got to make it so much more rewarding as well. You know, most people here in the States, if they have that, 5, 6, 7 day vacation, they just want to go lay out on a beach somewhere, which is understandable completely. But instead,
Mhm.
you rather risk the treachery that is the cold weather and go through some maybe not so comfortable times, but you get the experience of a lifetime. So I think that goes into being a traveler. You're not looking for the easy route all the time, but you also hit on the point, when you had that experience, that English is not going to get you everywhere in the world, right? And there's a certain humility that you learn on the road, and the fact that we are not everything. Not everyone speaks our language, and nor do they need to. So there's an appreciation of that cultural difference, and you kind of just get used to it overall, and almost look forward to the fact that you're going to experience something new. At least I do, not to speak for you whatsoever, but where did you find that cultural divide to be the most difficult? I mean, you're so well versed, especially in that part of the world, the Far East. So can you tell us, where exactly was the time, besides what you just had, that you
Mhm.
found not only the most cultural, or I should say the richest cultural experience because of the lack of the language, but also where you learned that little bit of humility.
Definitely. No, and I think as you said, it's very country specific, because some countries are completely focused on, let's just say, the globalized English speaking world, i.e., the Philippines.
Yeah.
I mean, the Americans were there for almost 40 years. The Spanish were there for 400 years before that, and they should be speaking Spanish, right? In terms of in terms of historical accident, but they're speaking English. You juxtapose that with Japan or even Korea, South Korea, and Seoul, which I was a bit surprised. And there's a totally different appreciation for English, in the sense that they don't need it, and you don't interact with foreigners typically on a daily basis. So again, it's not necessary. They have their own economy. They have their own environs, their own content, their own media. Everything is completely uh, situated towards a monolingual society. And surprisingly enough, Brazil is pretty much the same way. I mean, a country of 210 million people, Portuguese is the moniker. And if you don't speak Portuguese, well, you're gonna have some issues, right? So I think one of the first distinctions is, what is the direction of the economy? Is the economy tourism driven primarily? So a Thailand, a Cambodia, places like that, they're more likely to speak English, because that's the medium of communication. You're not going to speak Thai, and or likely not going to. I tried learning Cambodian, Khmer, or Khmer, excuse me. My Cambodian friends will roast me for that. Uh, but yeah, so I tried. I was there for 3 months. I was an English teacher volunteering there, and I delved into the language. At one point, I knew the alphabet, 56 characters. And if you have that kind of patience and you have the kind of time to do that, that's great. But most people don't. So I think it's something where it's making an effort. That's the biggest thing. Thank you. Hello. Good morning. Good day. How are you? Just showing that you're you care and that you also are not just every other tourist that's coming through and is going to say, "Oh, why don't you use the proper grammar or use the article in this particular sentence the right way?" Because there's some people like that. It's incredibly condescending. And those people don't obviously appreciate the environs they're in because they're hung up on other things.
Completely agree. And I almost think that it kind of speaks to a larger point of the fact that when people do go to these various places, at least from what I've seen, you have the availability to kind of travel in your own little bubble, right? So essentially, you're just bringing your home country, your habits, your culture with you into new locations. And, that's one way to travel. There's no judgment here whatsoever. But the way that you are talking about, you're far more into the immersive travel, especially being there for so much longer. And it opens up an entirely different venue and experience completely because you are now not ever to become a local, but you're at least experiencing life in the eyes of a local and trying to assimilate rather than visit. And I think that really touches at the heart of what we're going for here. Obviously, don't be a tourist, right? We want to be a traveler. And I know the two terms a lot of the times are synonymous, but to me, and I believe to you, I mean, the distinction is clear. So, respect the culture. You are a visitor, but also, appreciate what you can learn from them because, just coming into a country doesn't mean that you know better. It's different, but it's not better, right? I'm
Precisely.
sure you've seen that on the road and been a part of that, especially as a solo traveler. A lot of people talk about how, or ask, I should say, well, how do you do that? Doesn't it get lonely? And, aren't you afraid? But at least in my experience, you're never really solo unless you want to be. Sometimes you even have to try even harder to be solo when you're solo traveling. I mean, is that what you found as well?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think you hit it right on the head there in terms of solo travel is just that. People stigmatize it and think, oh, well, how could you do that? How could you be alone? This, that, and the other. I actually meet more people traveling solo than I do if I'm traveling with uh, my wife or a friend or whatever it may be, because you have reason to put yourself out there more. You have more of an impetus to go somewhere, do something, or try something that you might not do otherwise, right? Because you have to communicate, you have to order food, or you have to meet this person here at this time, or whatever it may be, right? And going back to what you were saying earlier, in terms of just how some people travel in their own little bubble, that's so true. I've met so many people, not to stereotype or stigmatize anybody, but a lot of times Americans or Europeans from their particular country, they'll stay in their own little language bubble. They'll stay in their own resort bubble, and that's fine. That's entirely up to you if that's the kind of experience that you want. But again, that's a tourist experience. And if you're a traveler, you're going to put yourself out there. I mean, I lived in 9 countries now, and every time I've done that, I've tried to immerse myself with locals as much as possible. So if it's in Asia, I mean, of course I'll be friendly and polite to Westerners, but I will make sure that I talk to locals, learn about the local culture, do as much as I can to have an immersive experience during my time there, because that's really why you're there. Otherwise, I mean, you could be in a Marriott anywhere, right? Or
Yeah.
any other place, and you have the same experience. You have the same sheets. You have the same room dimensions, but you could be in a hut. You could be in a gur in Mongolia. You could be in a why am I blanking on the name? Japanese. It's a ryokan. There we go. You could be in a ryokan. Those are truly unique experiences, and you don't need to go to Airbnb to find those. Even you can just find them on your own. So that's what makes travel special to me.
Totally agree. And that's funny you just said that at the end because I was going to ask you that same thing. What is it about travel that makes it higher in regards to priorities and everything else. I mean, obviously you have your career, your life, your family, but travel is at the core of your being, you know, as long back as I can remember. So, I mean, you hit it right there. So that's awesome. And I appreciate that, telling us that. You know, it's interesting, just like you said, you can bring your culture with you. And even when you do try to separate and immerse yourself within a culture and do what you can, obviously slowly and with respect, there are those creature comforts that we all miss. I know for me that, you know, when I defined America overseas to even Western Europeans and just everyone around the world, I always talked about how comfortable and convenient the Western world is, right? Anything I want is at my fingertips. I don't need to go to 5 different grocery stores. I can go to one. I don't even have to go to any. I can sit on my couch, you know.
Right.
While you were in these exotic various locations around the world, was there an underlying missing or want or desire for any of those creature comforts? And what was it that stood out among everything else?
There were definitely times where I thought to myself, "Oh, well, if I were at home in the States, I could have had X right now," or whatever it may be. But I undertook a paradigm shift with that, because instead of material things, I started craving experiences, and experiences were my new currency. So I looked at my friends and said, "Oh, I have this nice new car. I have this place, these things." I said, "That's great. But I have this laundry list of experiences that are going to far outweigh those material things and outlast them."
Right.
Because that's what memories are, right? They're treasured, especially when you've lived them and experienced them yourself. And no, there's no question that there are certain things, and just in terms of not only convenience, but also products and things that you wish you could tap into right in the moment. The internet's really helped with that. And
Yeah.
I remember there would be times like living in Australia when I couldn't watch football overnight or something, and I wake up in the middle of the night like, "Oh, the score, the game's on. Oh, it's 4 a.m. I got class in 3 hours. Oh." But I mean, again, these are first world problems, and it's something that you roll with, because there are other positives that outweigh that. There are other things that just get to a point where you think to yourself, "Oh, I can do without this." And that's where I've gotten now. I've come to realize that there's so many things that I don't even need. We all don't need. We think we need them because of rampant consumption and consumerism and marketing. Not to go down the rabbit hole of ideologies here, but
Right.
we're just we're taught that, at least in the U.S. intrinsically, we need these set of things. And of course, humans have 5 basic needs, right? But if we stick to ourselves and we stay true to ourselves, we'll find that you can actually do more with less.
I love that you said that, because it's so true, right? Next year, there'll be the next iPhone, there'll be the next this, the next that, the next car, but that memory is never going to go away. And that experience and the adversity that you had to go through during that time to make it such a special memory, no one can take that away or top it. Only you can. You know, you can build upon that. And I add that same thing. And it's amazing to see what you can live without, and how your personality, maybe not your personality, but your overall just mindset shifts when you shed all the materialism. Like for myself, when I went backpacking, I had a carry-on size 40-liter backpack, and that was it. Those were my worldly possessions, and I jam-packed that thing. And I even found myself to, after a while, not even need everything in there. So it's
Exactly.
amazing, because it's all relative, right? So you go from the large suitcase to get smaller and smaller. Now, when there's a plus one or significant other in the picture, that's a different story. But
Of course.
if we're just talking about our solo travels here, you know, you do shift, and you realize that what you take to the very end are the memories, not the materials. And you need to get out of the certain zones that you're in or lifestyle that you're in to truly understand that and embrace that fact too.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. Couldn't have
Sure.
said it better myself.
Great, man. Well, now it is time. So at the end of every episode, we do like to have a lightning round where I'm going to shoot off 10 questions to you, and obviously all travel related. And you just go ahead and let me know what's going on here. So question number one wish, what would it be?
Be a better humanitarian. Just have everyone in the world have a baseline of sustenance needs, and just for everybody to be happy.
Now I feel like a selfish jerk. Mine was,
Don't worry.
more money so I could travel.
We all think about that. Not at all. Don't beat yourself up.
Well, it's good. They say, your partners should contrast, right? So this is good.
There you go.
So which country do you want to visit the most and why?
I have to say right now it'll be Lebanon. And of course, you alluded to your Lebanese background earlier in the show. And it's always been a country of contrast for me. It's never a good time to go because there's always something happening, right? But just there, it's so unique. Not only the melting pot of religions, a melting pot of cultures, a melting pot of cuisine and gastronomy, oenology. There's just so much going on there. And I mean, to have world-class beaches in a country where you have ski slopes not even 2 hours away, pretty unique.
Very, very. And it's up there on my list too. We should make a plan to get there. For sure.
Let's go.
Let's do it. What's one place or thing in your country you still really want to do?
So I still really want to get out to Alaska. Haven't done that yet. Alaska and Hawaii, kind of the far-flung, non-contiguous U.S. And it's just wild and totally different lifestyle out there. So
for sure,
that's on the list.
Sorry to interrupt you. Have you been to Hawaii?
No, I haven't.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely.
Missing three states: Oregon, Alaska, Hawaii.
There we go. Okay, so you've been to California? Well, not Northern California, right?
No, I haven't been north of the Bay Area.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Well, we'll get there for sure. So, strangest thing you've eaten?
Oh, that we could do a whole show on that. But I will say the duck fetus, baby duck fetus in the Philippines is called balat. I had quite an evening the night before and was still a little hungover. This is why I did it. We were driving on the way to the airport, and it's just a really strange consistency. I won't go into details because it's a little mean, but it was interesting.
All right, so we're summing it up as interesting. Okay, we'll leave it at that until we do another episode on it. So, what is your favorite thing about your country?
As you said as well, just the diversity and the multiculturalism. You can come from anywhere in the world, and if you buy into the ethos of America and into universal values, it doesn't matter your background or anything really about you, about any preconceived notion about an individual. You have the ability to move to the next step, whether it's socioeconomically, whether it's intellectually, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. So what's the must-see attraction in your country?
There's so many. I mean, it's hard to really sum it up as just one. I would say the Grand Canyon has to be up there. Pretty much everyone's top 5, I would assume. The Yellowstone also. Well, there's 2, so I already broke the rule. But Yellowstone would probably be my number 1 in the U.S., followed by the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, it's just tough. I would almost just say national parks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. If you can be generic, all the better, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just gorgeous. All right. One tip you have for travelers?
As we were talking about in your episode and a little bit here as well, just go a little bit beyond your comfort zone. Don't go jumping into the deep end of the pool. Just push yourself a little bit in a direction that you might not do at home. See what happens. It's probably going to be good, and it's probably going to open you up to a new possibility next time around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Words to live by. So what motivates you to travel?
It's really trying to see the human condition around the world and just trying to interact with people, because we're all social creatures and we all are humans, right? And it's interesting to see how other people live. Now, obviously, there's great disparities within that, right? But it also makes you a more humble and open-minded person. So really those 3 things.
Yeah. And then which mode or modes of transportation do you recommend for your country?
Well, you definitely stole the cheap flight option, but I will go out on a limb and I will say long distance buses. Now, this isn't for everybody, but a friend of mine that I used to work with in the restaurant industry, he's a Napoli actually, and he was telling me how he did the U.S. by Greyhound bus, and he literally just hopped on a bus overnight, stopped off at places, basically Route 10 in Jacksonville to San Diego. Just kind of, yeah, just went along there and stopped off as he could, and had a great. It's not an experience that's for everybody, but if you really want to see the country and you have time, I would recommend it.
I hope you're still in touch with him because I definitely want to bring him on the show and talk about that. That's very interesting. I used to take a Megabus, and I thought a
Oh yeah,
7-hour
me too.
journey would be a long time, but across the country, wow, that's awesome. And don't forget hitchhiking, of course, right? Although that's illegal
Right,
here.
for the true adventurers.
Yeah. All right. So if there is one experience you could relive in your life, what would it be?
Well, of course, apart from my wedding day and my beautiful wife and family, excluding all of that, uh, that's a really tough one. It's actually one that we did kind of recently for my wife's birthday, and it was ballooning, and really enjoyed it. It was something that wasn't really on my radar, and always kind of something that I thought I'd get around to, and honestly was kind of a bit didn't know what to expect, was a little bit afraid with safety and whatnot, but it's truly magical because you release helium, hot air rises, of course, you go up. But after that, there's literally no steering, there's no brakes, there's nothing.
Yeah.
So you're at the mercy of winds and weather, and it's totally organic experience. And I guess that's a good way to sum up kind of how travel is, right? You chart a course, speed bumps and unexpected occurrences arrive along the way, but you're a better and more complete person because of it.
I think that's a perfect place to end right there.
Thanks so much for your time, Chris.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Winfield. All right. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.
Indeed. Take care.
So there you have it. I just finished up interviewing Winfield Glascock, who will be my co-host on this adventure that we're calling Locales Unknown. We are so excited about this. I mean, come on. How about that last little metaphor at the end regarding hot air balloon, the experience, and how that wraps up directly relates to travel. So those type of things are what you guys can expect coming up. Make sure you follow us on social media. We are at Locales Unknown. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook, and of course, wherever you get your podcasts. Really looking forward to bringing on a lot of guests here. We have a couple already in the pipeline that I know you guys will love. Stick with us, and we will come back to you soon. Thanks for listening, guys. Until next time, take care.